Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Nash, AAPG, and I'm happy to welcome you to our session 11 of Pivoting 2021, Thriving with Change. And today's topic is really quite interesting. We have a great group of presenters. Our topic is the new way to work. So our session today, we will have Fritz, as our president, will be presenting. Ursula EMD President, is Energy Minerals Division. Miriam Winsten, our Division of Environmental Geoscience. Julian Chenin, Sustainability Committee. And then our panelists will be John Thurmond with Hess, Ellen Williams, Exum Instruments, and Alejandro Valenciano of TGS, and Vitaly Kuchinskiy, Petrocubic, and then on our new technology showcase, we'll have Sunil Garg of DataVedik. So right now, I'd like to take the opportunity to go ahead and share the platform with Fritz, who is here to greet us as our president. Welcome, Rick.
Hello, everyone. Well, you see I have the Canadian Rockies behind me, so I'm thinking about where to go to on vacation. So that's one of my favorite spots. I hope everyone's doing fine this evening. Again, thank you, Susan, for setting this up, and thank you for the speakers. I look forward to hearing you tonight. One of the things that we spent a lot of time on this year is looking at what jobs look like for the future geoscience. And we have a MIT program, we call it Members in Transition, which is a SPE program that we jumped on board, and it's a way to look at different jobs and so on. So I'm always interested in hearing about careers, and in these pivots, we have something like 50 jobs now on that site. Susan has done a great job putting that site together, so I would encourage you. You can look it up on AAPG's website anytime. It's called Members in Transition, or MIT. What's the actual link, Susan? You remember
it's a toolbox. So it's AAPG toolbox.
Toolbox.
Dot
Yeah.
AAPG. Yeah. Dot org.
Susan put a lot of resources on it.
Right, and the goal of that is to give you tools, of course, but also to think about how to blend your capabilities. So, and to that end, we're also going to be launching something called AAPG Academy, which will be give you a chance to have like quick educational experiences. But I'll go into that a little bit later. So anyway, welcome and thank you, Rick. And I'd like to turn the platform over now to Ursula, the President of Energy Minerals Division.
Thank you again, Susan, for inviting me. These pivot series have been just amazingly interesting and entertaining what you put together. I'm still president of EMD, but 1st of July, just Dustin Bird will take over. And wanted to point out that EMD has a website where you can look up a lot of the different topics you might be interested in. If you're interested in pivoting, for example, critical minerals, geothermal, hydrogen, gas hydrates, or any kind of uranium or rare earth elements. We have a very interesting program that's taking shape for the image meeting that's together with SEG in Denver in September, and I'm so excited. It will be a fantastic meeting, so I hope you'll all be able to attend. I encourage you to go to our website, which is unfortunately not always the most up-to-date website, but you can always contact each chairman separately, and they would love to fill you in if you also wanted to volunteer. So I don't want to take any more time from the more interesting speakers. Enjoy. Thank you, Susan, and hope to see you at Image.
Thank you. So our next leader of AAPG is our Division of Environmental Geosciences President-elect, Miriam Winsten.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending on where you are located. I'm very excited to be a part of this. I've been doing these with Susan, and I'd say for a while. I always learn something new. I will be in a few weeks, as Ursula mentioned, the changing of the guard occurs at AAPG, and we'll be taking the Division of Environmental Geoscience. And if you're even remotely interested, we'd love to have you work with us. You can always send me a note. Our big themes are sustainable development, which Julian, I'm sure, will mention and talk about in a minute. We have a nice program for the new AAPG SEG image meeting in September. It's theme 6. It's going to be all about sustainable development, multiple sessions, really great topics. Two of the other big items I'd like to mention is water. Water is very important. I'm going to work with other parts of AAPG on the influence of water and energy. And I would say the third piece of the puzzle is going to be CCUS, the carbon question, the reducing of the carbon footprint. And we're already working on the CCUS forum for 2022. So stay tuned. And this should be a great program tonight. Thanks, Susan, and to all the speakers.
Oh, thank you. And before we move to Julian Chenin and the Sustainability Committee, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Aramco Services. They have sponsored our entire series, and they've made it possible for us also to make it available afterwards. So you will be getting an email with a link to the recording. So that's thank you to Aramco. And also I'd like to mention we have our collaboration platform. It's provided by Zrathis. Zrathis is, Rekha Patel is here in the audience. She will type the URL in the chat box. But I'd like to just take a moment to say that the purpose of the collaboration platform is to give you a chance to continue to interact, but also to participate in real life challenges. So we have a real geothermal lease that you have the chance to evaluate, and you can get a certificate for participating in it, and you might even get a job because the people who own the lease are interested in having some help. So anyway, just an opportunity. So I'd like to turn the platform over to Julian Chenin from the Sustainability Committee.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Susan, as well as all the sponsors and the speakers for putting on these series. They're extremely educational. And like Miriam said, you learn everything. You learn something new every time. So I really appreciate it. I'm from the Sustainable Development Committee with AAPG. And what we do is we communicate broadly the positive, technical, economic, as well as the environmental and social benefits of the petroleum industry as a whole, holistically. And we talk about those collective efforts towards sustainable development, such as projects in the CCUS space and critical minerals, geothermal, especially water, which is inevitably going to become the next oil. So we do a lot of that in that space. And we also have a whole session dedicated at the brand new AAPG SCG Combined Conference Image, where we'll be discussing many of these different opportunities and what that future looks like, not just for distinguished professionals, but for also the oncoming workforce. And what better topic to talk about today about thriving with change? How can incoming students and young professionals pivot and really blaze their own trail in this new and evolving environment? So we really look forward to the session, hearing what the speakers have to share. And thank you again, Susan.
Thank you. So I'm really happy to turn the platform to our first speaker, John Thurmond of Hess. So welcome, John.
Hey, Susan, how are you? Thanks for the invitation to come and speak today. Really appreciate it. Let me go ahead and share my screen and get started here. I just have a few slides. Let's see. Hopefully that works all right. You can see them now,
Perfect.
slides?
Yes,
Great.
perfect.
Yeah, just by way of introduction, my name is John Thurmond. I am the advisor for emerging technology and geosciences for Hess. I work in the CTO's organization. And what we really do is look for technologies that fundamentally change the way we work. And we're really looking for those big step changes to think about how we can get faster, more efficient, better at what we do. All of those kinds of things, not so much incremental things, but really big leaps forward. And, I'll talk a little bit, about a different angle from some of the other presenters you'll see tonight about new ways of working. One of the things we find in the technology group is that we have good ideas of where technology is going, but that doesn't always match user experiences. So the only way we can really uncover that is to get technology in the hands of users so we can get their feedback on how they feel about using it. So today I'm just going to touch on a couple of pilots that we've been running lately in augmented and virtual reality. And these are areas where we're really thinking hard about where things are going and how we can best use these technologies today, and then how we can best use them tomorrow and be ready for that. So first I'll dive in with augmented reality. So augmented reality, for anybody who's not familiar with these kind of headsets, these are like smart glasses that project information in front of you, and they can be controlled through gesture or voice control. Well, you also see the real world. So it's like an overlay on the real world. And our thought here was that if you can combine these with software for remote assistance, for example, helping people out in the field call for assistance, you can connect a person in the field with an expert, and they can be seeing and talking about the same things. And this can really speed things up and help avoid potential mistakes. This keeps everyone both safer and more efficient. So, on one side of the field, we're talking about really sending people out into the field with these kinds of technologies to test them out. And when we run these kind of pilots, we ask key questions, often specifically to the users. Can you really carry out a field process wearing one of these devices? So we'll equip somebody with it, and or a few people, and have them run tasks and see if they can really wear them and use them in the field. Fundamentally, do they actually help make the experience better? And can they still stay safe while they're wearing them? You don't want to have somebody be distracted and not be able to see something. So all of those kind of fundamental questions are things we ask. Also, what kinds of new or better data would our field workers like to collect in the future, when they're wearing these headsets? So, you can see in the image at the bottom there's an overlay of, some valves and some information. What would people like to be able to see over and beyond the ability to connect? I know personally, when I go out and work on my car outside, which I do sometimes, maybe not right now in Houston, it's getting a little hot, but I find myself running back and forth between looking at videos on YouTube and looking at the car and trying to fix something. And it would be nice if I just had something where I could see and interact with somebody who was telling me what to do, and they could see what I could see. So, I mean, you can imagine this technology really working, but it's really only by asking those questions that I put out before, putting these devices in the hands of field personnel and trying things, that we can really learn. It doesn't matter how many presentations you see, how many demos you see, that never competes with really trying things. So, often the approach is to go to people in the field and say, hey, how would you think you might want to use these technologies? And they're not really ready to answer that question. It's like asking people to play air guitar like Jimi Hendrix when they've never touched a guitar or seen a guitar, right? They don't have the context to really answer that question. But when you've equipped them with the technology and asked them some of these questions, they can really get to the heart of what matters and what doesn't in these. So this is where we really put our time and energy and focus, because this helps us gauge technology readiness. Is the hardware really ready for this? And organizational readiness. Are people ready for this? And then the fundamental question of what needs to mature more in order for this to happen. So we put these out in the Bakken for a variety of tests. This pilot was run by Alyssa Mueller, who's also on this call. She may be available for questions if anybody has any on that specific topic. But I'm gonna shift gears into virtual reality real quick. Virtual reality is not new, right? So this is the AAPG Explorer cover from June 2004. when the industry had a big push into virtual reality sort of previously, and that's a much younger and much slimmer version of me down in the bottom right corner working in virtual reality. I think I ran my first virtual reality field trip 20 years ago. So what's new and different today than where we were then? Well, you know, fundamentally, what's different is the hardware has gotten really good, really easy, and really cheap. For a few $100s, you can connect a headset to your Wi-Fi. You don't even have to connect it to your PC and view all kinds of content. And equally important is the software focus has really been on being collaborative and social, not just put on this headset and see cool things, right? And so in the past, it would have been one person driving this with one very expensive setup. Now there's really a democratization of the hardware. People can have their hands on it really cheaply and easily, and we can do a lot more with it. And we can interact, right? So, you know, the questions here are, does this really help us achieve learning outcomes? Are the standalone headsets good enough right now, or are we waiting for more technology? Does, you know, getting people hands-on with this equipment let them think about how they might use VR in the future? How are they going to do that, right? Same thing with the smart glasses, but now we're talking about VR. You know, and what we've been doing really is running field trips in VR. And you can see one of these collaborative things where everybody's on VR headsets, looking at the same outcrops, pointing at the same things, seeing the same things. And, you know, getting them hands-on really got them thinking about this and understanding the technology. And so what we do is we ask the users questions, right? And the surveys here are pretty conclusive that when we asked the people who tested this about VR field trips, you know, they think this is really effective at both teaching and learning. And we had them both teach and learn, so we got both sides of that equation. And then asking them a fundamental question of, do you think VR will be an increasing part of how we work? You know, overwhelmingly the responses are yes. And so, you know, as part of our pilot process, you know, we build these pilots around these questions, we do the experiment, and we learn. You know, whether we go to this scale part or not depends on whether we find the right thing and whether the users are ready and whether the technology is ready. But when we do, we're quite happy to move very quickly in that. And that's all I have to say. So happy to answer any questions or hear any thoughts you might have on this. Thanks for the time, Susan.
Oh, that's great. Well, so you mentioned having a colleague participating. Would she like to say anything?
Yeah, Alyssa, you're welcome to say something if you like.
Well, thank you, Susan. I think the key thing that we learned, as John mentioned, was listening to the field workers in the case of those smart glasses. When they first started working with them, their kind of immediate reaction was, wow, this is difficult. I can't get the position just right. It doesn't feel comfortable to me. And so we gave them time to really get used to that on their own. And now we've moved into additional phases of testing it, and they're more comfortable with it, and they're excited to think about what could I do with this. But we needed that first, what we called kind of a test drive, so that they could really get used to the technology. We weren't asking them to do anything with it special with those headsets. We were just giving them that chance to give it a test drive and get to know it themselves, and they got comfortable with it. So I think that was a key point for us.
That makes a lot of sense.
So Susan, there's a question in chat, which I think is a good one from Ursula, asking why did we get away from the visualization rooms? And visualization rooms still have their place, but I think the one challenge of those big cave systems, those big VR systems, more than just a visualization room, is one person stands and one person drives, and everybody else kind of clusters around them and sees whatever they see. Whereas in these kind of VR collaborations, everybody has their own controlled view. So it makes people less inclined to be motion sick and a lot of other things, because it's like the difference. It's hard to get motion sick when you're driving a car, but it's really easy when you're a passenger. It's exactly the same kind of thing. When you're driving, it's much easier because you know what to expect.
That makes sense. And in terms of the augmented reality, I know that there's imaged reality, that they have the augmented reality headsets. And I've tried them on a couple of times, and they basically do the field trips, as you were talking about. And another thing they do is they connect them to sequence stratigraphy. And so they try to, like, say, connect the subsurface to the outcrop. Do you guys do anything like that?
Yeah, I would say we're pretty early in our journey of what we want to do on these field trips. What, you know, the way we tested this is really to have people build little short single learning objective field trips, you know, in small groups of 2, and then they would lead the other participants through these field trips to get them a sense of what works and what doesn't with how you use this technology. And that informs us of how we go further, what kinds of things we want to see out of the software, all of those kinds of questions. And so, you know, as we move further, we'll certainly develop richer and richer content in here, you know, assuming things continue on a positive trajectory and keep building more and more.
Okay, so the chat's getting filled up. So Don Remmer asks, is this meant to replace basic geologic skills training?
No, I mean, I think, you know, our view of this is really that you want to use this to augment going into the field. So the advantage is you can get the large scale overviews before you ever set foot in the field. So you don't have that first mountaintop stop where you roll out the big maps and show everybody where everything is going to be that they're going to see that day or that week. You get that overview before you set foot in the field. So you're saving time for the details in the field as opposed to the overview. And then when you come back, you could also share your learnings much easier with somebody. You can bring colleagues to an outcrop and say, this is what I saw, this is how it relates to the field that we're working on. And that's really powerful potentially as well. So it's more that in association with as opposed to a replacement of.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So we'll have time for one more question, and then we'll kind of move to the general question and answer at the end. Let me see how many questions we do have. Yeah, so okay, then Denise Stone asks, what's the cost? How affordable would VR systems be across the industry?
So, I mean, the VR headsets these days are really cheap. I mean, you can go, you know, what we're testing on is the Oculus Quest 2, and you can go buy one of these today for they're about $300 at most. They're pretty cheap. So there's no real issue in terms of cost with widespread adoption of that. It's just really, is this the right technology, the right time to jump on that?
Great. Well, we'll have, hopefully we'll have a chance to address some of the other questions at the end, but I want to make sure that our other speakers have plenty of time. So thank you, that was great.
Of course, thank you, Susan.
So our next speaker is Ellen Williams of Exum Instruments, and she will be talking about smart quality assurance.
Yeah, thanks so much, Susan. And I hope you all can see my screen, see the slides here. So yeah, thanks again for having me to speak this evening. I have spoken at one of these AAPG evening events, Thriving with Change webinars in the past. So for those who have seen our technology before, great. For those who have not, then I'll give a brief overview, because what I really want to talk about is more kind of the software and the user experience aspect, not so much the hardware aspects of the technology. So what we at Exum have done, we're a startup technology company based out of Denver, Colorado. We've created a new solution for analyzing solid samples. So this means getting the full periodic table of what's in your rock, what's in your piece of metal, directly analyzing it, getting quantification in a much simpler manner than traditional methods. And so if we look at some of these traditional methods, what you can see on the left here is the sort of state of the art for solid sample analysis for trace elements and very low limits of detection. What you see is an LA ICP-MS, a laser ablation inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometer. And this is, so you've got the piece of machinery on the left here, that's your laser ablation piece. That's what allows you to directly analyze a solid sample. And then over here, this is your mass spectrometer piece. And if you wanted to, you could go through the process of diluting and digesting and using acids and doing all these sample preparation materials to get your solid into a liquid. But this laser ablation piece makes it a little bit easier so that you can just directly analyze your solid. But the problem is that no two companies in the analytical instrument industry, make both of these machines. So you have two different manufacturers for these two different machines. It's funny, we were just talking with a professor at the University of Tulsa a few weeks ago, talking about trying to get his LA ICP-MS to work, that he literally has to use 2 space bars and try to hit them at the same time with those 2 different softwares for the 2 different machines in order to get it to run. And then you're typically needing an additional software package to get them both to talk to one another and get the results that you need. And so our CEO, Jeff Williams, he was pursuing his PhD in analytical chemistry, just getting so frustrated by these types of instruments that he said there has to be a better way. So not only did he develop a new hardware solution, but what this really enabled was a new software solution, because what frustrated him even more than dealing with the 2 different pieces of hardware was dealing with these antiquated software packages that have just not been updated since the 80s or whenever these instruments were first come out. And so what our technology is, it is a laser ablation, laser ionization, time of flight mass spectrometer, which sounds like a mouthful, but the way that we have combined this all into a 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot compact package, it is very intuitive to use. And so for those who aren't familiar with mass spectrometry, what it is the measurement of ions, breaking apart ions to determine the masses of what elements or molecules are in your sample. So the innovative part here is combining that laser ablation, laser ionization in order to generate these ions. This isn't just taking that full lab's worth of equipment and compacting it. This is a fundamentally different way to create ions, which makes it more representative of what's in the sample and makes it much easier to quantify. So as a result, this can be a much more streamlined automatic process. And so the user does not have to have a PhD in analytical chemistry in order to get the results that they need out of their rock or their metal or their biologic sample or whatever it may be. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to show a video. This is our director of software and integration, just kind of messing with the user experience, is the user interface of our software, just so you can see that another benefit of creating a new solution in the 21st century is that we can borrow from smartphone technology. So we're all used to zooming in and getting the image just right on our smartphone using our fingers. And that's what an analytical instrument should be too. We shouldn't have, software based in Windows 98 in order to get our analytical information. And now here's a really important point too. What he just did is define all of these different sample holders so that now all of the metadata or all of the analyses is always combined with that one sample. So in this particular case, we're looking at a 3x3 of different coins. This could be different core samples, different cuttings analyses. But the important point here is that everything that we're doing now gets attached to that single sample so that we're not having to rely on our lab notebooks, our, tally books, whatever, to keep notes. Everything gets stored into this software. You can see I'm choosing some points for analysis. Again, just a very intuitive way to click on what you want to analyze, change the laser spot size for how in-depth you might want to get. And then ultimately just going through and pressing go and allowing this full analysis to run. But again, just kind of summarizing a few key points here, making a hardware that enables an easy to use software experience so that I like John's word, democratizing the experience for more people to use, and then keeping track of that data in an intuitive software system so that we're not having to rely on notes, extra lab notebooks, extra databases. We can keep track of everything so that we're able to learn from it in a more effective way rather than just having a bunch of dumb data in spreadsheets as we're all used to doing. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and see what questions came into the chat. So it
Here's
looks like,
one. Yes.
oh yeah,
Go
go ahead.
ahead. Well, Ursula asks, Ellen, what is the smallest resolution of sample points?
So we can go down to 1 micron. So from 1 micron up to 250 microns for a point. And we can either do like chemical mapping, so getting a full periodic table at each one of those spots, or we could get just like a bulk characterization by doing several, maybe, 100 micron spot sizes and just getting a bulk characterization of a certain sample.
Oh, that's interesting. So as people, so does it work equally well with all materials, or do you have to do a little bit more processing for different materials?
So as long as we have, I guess it'll work for anything that's solid and has a relatively flat surface, we can analyze it. In terms of getting quantified data, having something in our database with which we can calibrate to will be the way to get the most effective quantified data. But yes, so far we've been able to get good results for a variety of different materials. As I mentioned, a lot of our early case studies have been with metals, with glasses, with rocks, biological materials as well.
That's really exciting. I just, so what do you think are the biggest hurdles for, I mean, this is probably a general question as well, but for you as a startup and getting, what are some of the hurdles that you're facing with like post-COVID or COVID? It's not really post yet.
Yeah, so obviously with any new technology, you're going, especially hardware, you're going to run into challenges that you didn't foresee. And that's what this past year has really been for us, is we have just been running samples from various different collaborators, different types of samples, to make sure that we know what's going to break first before it goes out into a customer's office. So there's certainly a lot of learnings that have gone on with just continuing to use the instrument, seeing where particle buildup is, seeing what for example, we realized that the glass in which the laser shot through, after several laser shots, it was starting to change the way that glass was. And so what we did is we allowed it to start just rotating every few laser shots to preserve the lifetime of that glass. So now essentially you can use that same glass, that sacrificial glass, for up to a year before you need to replace it, rather than just getting results that you didn't expect based on the effects that the laser was having on the glass. So that was a long way to say any new hardware, you come up with a lot of challenges just based on use. And that's why we're looking for great early adopting partners that are going to tell us, give us that feedback on what's working and what's not working and how we can continue to improve.
Excellent. Okay, so Christopher Platt asks, does your analysis link with commercial rock catalogs?
Not yet, but that's certainly an option, and something that we'd be really interested in pursuing. As I mentioned, we have a full software team. We are a startup that tries to be very agile and develop things that our users would want to use and that would add value to them. We don't just want to make something that we think is neat without getting feedback from what would be most beneficial, like, linking to a rock library. That's a good idea.
So time for one more, and then we'll see how quickly this goes. Exum technology looks like the future, from John Kristinek. How long is the cycle time for typical analysis of rocks?
So very quick. If you're just looking for just kind of bulk characterization from pump down, because all of it is done under vacuum. So it does take a couple minutes for the system to pump down to vacuum after you've loaded your samples in to getting the quantified data. It's really just a few minutes. If you wanted to do something very intense, like do a chemical mapping of, maybe an 8 centimeter by 8 centimeter piece, which is what we're able to do, and you want to do that at a very high resolution, maybe down to like 10 microns or something like that, that's going to take on the order of hours. But just getting a quick answer, bulk characterization, can take as little as just a few minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I'll combine two questions and then we'll go to the next speaker. So Michael Campbell asks, does this actually replace geochemistry laboratories? And then we also have the question, is it ruggedized for well sites?
So the idea is for it to be ruggedized for well sites. It is still quite heavy. It does still require a power cable out the back. So you would still want it at a field office or in a trailer or something. It wouldn't necessarily go out just in the back of a truck. So that's sort of the vision and where we want to go. For now, it is probably best suited for those geochemistry laboratories just to speed up their analysis and allow them to give better results and faster results to their customers. So yes, those are definitely the avenues that we're thinking about in terms of how this can add value to the oil and gas industry.
Oh, that's great. And there are a lot of questions in the chat box, so we can't really get to them right now, but if you want to answer them in the chat, Ellen, we will save the chat and I can make it available.
Yep, will do.
Okay, great. So I'm really happy to announce our next speaker is Alejandro Valenciano of TGS, and he will be talking about new powerful cloud-based analytics. So welcome, Alejandro.
Thank you. I hope you can see my presentation.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for the invitation, Susan. And my name is Alejandro Valenciano. I'm a geophysicist by background. I like 25 years in a career in depth imaging and inversion R&D. But last year, in a way, I transitioned towards analytics and software. And this is something really interesting because it's a real possibility for many geophysicists. And I would like to share some of the work that we are doing at TES and related to new technologies, and especially with the artificial intelligence and how we made those technologies are available to our clients and in a way to automate some of the processes that we've done in the past in different ways. So just to give you a little bit of idea about TES, TES is a data company. It's the world's largest surface data company. The data libraries in TES have a well log data, production data. We have a lot of seismic data, and TES in a way pioneered the multi-client business model, and we are well known for data processing and selling seismic data, but there's also other activities at the company, like software and analytics are a good part of it. And as you might imagine, that all this data, terabytes and terabytes and petabytes of data, they'll end up all in the cloud, and how to manage that is an important part of our business. So just to give a little bit of what the company is about, I've already talked about the data libraries. We have expanding and into new form or new energies. We have a big component of data analytics, like for aiding interpretation and some of the workflows that we do in-house, and trying to push it to our clients and web applications. And we have access to cloud compute, and also on-premise. We have a data center with that mainly tailors to the business of data processing and imaging. So just to illustrate how these workflows look like, so I'm going to focus just on the well data in North America, and you can see we have millions and millions of wells with logs, and that doesn't mean that we are covering the whole surface with the information. As you can all know, most of the wells will have well logs that are incomplete or sometimes missing altogether. So how do we can make this information more complete? And that's where we, with the aid of artificial intelligence, we've been dividing different solutions. And one of them is automated log prediction, or we can call it analytic ready LAS. So let's say you have to your left, you have a group of logs in one well. Let's say gamma ray, resistivity, neutron porosity, density, and sonic. And with the use of machine learning, we fill up the gaps and the logs that are missing in a way. And we've done that for these five logs that I just said, but we are expanding on the number of logs. So here you have the blue, the recorded log, and in magenta, the predicted log in a way. And what that allows us to do is to enhance some of the workflows that have been done a different way in the past. So because we're going to end up with a complete set of logs, a complete set of information. So let's say we have now from the Z0 to Z max all the information for these 5 logs. So we could, let's say we could compute the acoustic impedance from the reflectivity and the sonic log, I mean from the density and the sonic log, or we could do other things like pick tops automatically because we have that kind of information, and do things like that. And just to illustrate a bit of how does that look, this is you can see in the top right corner, a cross section through I think it's in Denver Basin. So you can see the red line indicating how the direction of the cross section, and there are other logs in this cross section on all these wells, just that we did not have that many sonic data in those wells. With the use of our machine learning models, we can complete those sonics and get something that looks like this. So where you can see a lot of the geology and stratigraphy in the log. So I'm gonna flip back and forth just to illustrate how does that look. But something that I want to emphasize is that in this whole workflow, the machine learning code is really this small piece of it that in the red circle. And so there are many things that we've been doing in the industry in the past, which is our common practices in other disciplines like data cleanup, data QC. I mean, the model improvement, version control, and an efficient software pipeline to get these models into production. So this is something that is not new to our industry, and so in the machine learning, in a way, is just this little part of it. So just to illustrate, we built this RLAS as a service, and we use it internally. You can imagine every day we are incorporating new LAS files into our data library. So we need to automatically create this RLAS equivalent. So we have in a way, internally, we have a workflow to do that. But we decided to also make it available as a service online and in the cloud. And this is a RLAS on demand, and you can access to it in PGS.ai. This is one of it's the platform where we've used to deploy some of our workflows, our machine learning workflows, and to host other applications. So just to give you a little bit of a sample here, we have 10 different models, machine learning models for 10 different basins here. And in green, in yellow green here, greenish is the Permian Basin. And we have some of these well logs as an example. You can test those in our platform. But also you could upload your own LAS files to test this technology. So I recommend you to go in there and explore and experiment with this tool. I think there are like a number of logs that you can upload for free and then test the technology. So as I said, we have this TGS.ai, which is a platform where we deploy some of these workflows. And we use it also as to host some of the exciting new technologies and new as a platform to cater our data to new businesses and possibilities, like the new energy solutions, like the geothermal, carbon storage, and wind energy. We built some of these tools where we show different kind of data, try to build some intelligence on that data, and put some analytics behind it to get some insights on the data and possibilities for the future. So this is a sort of new thing for TES, and we are trying to get into this new energy solution business. And I think I'll take any questions you might have.
Well, there's some questions. I have one I'm just dying to ask. Okay, so I'm super impressed with the geothermal energy pathfinder, and I'm wondering exactly what does that involve, because I'm interested in like developing for AAPG a geothermal energy atlas. I know that Texas is developing one, but for sedimentary basins and globally. And I just think it would be super interesting to be able to deal with all the information. But I was just wondering what does TGS offer?
Okay, so that's a very dear question to me, because I was involved in building that tool. And so surface information is something we are we have a lot of that information as already in our companies. And at TES we also have besides the well data, besides the subsurface, that kind of subsurface information, seismic data, we also we've been building basic temperature models.
Is this from the bottom hole temperature in the logs?
Yes, it's based on the bottom hole temperatures, but there are also some other proprietary way of making that consistent and go from the surface to the bottom of the hole in a way that is consistent and that honor in a way some of the structural information you might also have. And so in a way it's kind of interesting, because you look at the map of the temperature of North America. Let's say you go at 3,000 meters depth, and you compare the resolution that was published from that map from SMU, and you compare it with the kind of resolution that we have in all these basin temperature models. It's a one day and night. Of course, there is a lot of resources involved on building those basin temperature model maps. And what we've done is put that information in the cloud in a way that you could explore those basin temperature model in conjunction with other forms of information. And we are really in the very beginning of this, and try to get people to explore these basin temperature models, explore also. There's a lot of movement on trying to reuse some of abandoned wells, for example, and that we have information in our databases on the when a well is being well is near the end of the life, when it's been abandoned, when it's what kind of a production it had before. So that kind of information, putting all together, is we can say some things about flow on those wells. We can say something about the temperature at that depth, and that can help exploration for.
Okay, so you can actually flag and color code the wells that are prospective for geothermal.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I will put a link to the geothermal prospector, to the Pathfinder in the chat.
Oh, please do. So we have time for another question. What specifically is the method for ML code? ANN, SOM?
No, it's decision trees. So it's like more details on that. I guess I really. encourage, if you have questions, to go to TES.ai. We have plenty of information on all these technologies there.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and then just one quick one. Are log curves normalized prior to application of the ML processes?
Yes, there is a lot of cleanup involved on the creating those models.
So you get rid of the noise.
A lot of the noise, a lot of this normalization, different kind of logs, and all of that is part of the creation of those models.
Okay, so there are other questions, but I think that we probably should move to our next speaker. So if you don't mind answering them in the chat, I'll save the chat. I'll make it available.
I will. Thanks.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Alejandro. That was great. So Vitaly Kuchinskiy is here, and welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Can you see the slides?
Perfectly. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Again, hi everyone. Thanks for inviting and giving this opportunity to share a few things about about our platform, our company, and what we do. And it's really fit that the topic today, the new way to work, really fits what we do here in Petrocubic. Petrocubic solutions. Basically, I want to change gear a little bit and talk about people and the tools and software specifically. So, so what we do is really around those two items. Probably focusing more about the tools and the software, how we can deliver and provide the software to the companies and individuals. So we initially found this company and build the platform that allows to find and hire the people, consultants primarily. So basically, like the freelance platform that exists in for other industry, we thought that's something that oil and gas industry is actually lacking. So we developed this platform, where you can easily find, we currently have almost 700 folks there, pretty open, right? So it's now you can go and find the skills that you need. You can see, obviously all the feedback and the background on the individuals. You can bid on rates, for instance, right? Again, cost efficiency at this point. But as we developed this platform and started working on this, we quickly realized the folks need tools to work with, right? So we all in oil and gas, industry, we all work with pretty expensive and it's professional software, right? So that led us to explore the ways how we can deliver those tools for the clients. So we call this workspaces. Basically, what we did, so we developed that what we call the workspaces platform. And let me maybe move quickly to this briefly through the consulting piece that I just mentioned to those workspaces. So what we did is we developed this platform where we created a few algorithms to work on it. Work with the third parties, major cloud providers, but mainly with the vendors and software developers to work that mechanism, right? How to deliver their tools when the individuals don't necessarily pay the 1 year subscription, right? Especially if they have some short-term projects to work with. So as you can see, there are a few examples of the software they already have in our platform. But basically, what we offering these days is on this platform is that remote access and the rendering abilities for the software. So basically, you just register there, you get login, and within 24 hours, you get the remote access to the workstation with the pre-installed software that you ordered. All of them, we have hourly rates, we have daily rates, we have monthly rates. So it's really on pay as you go model. And the few benefits we thought as for this is pretty straightforward beyond just the rental piece of it. So if I need to use this expensive software only for a couple of days, a few hours in those days, I don't have to subscribe. I don't have to go through all this, the procurement and the long contract with the vendor. I can simply order this. I can get it within with less than a day, installed and ready to go, and only pay for those hours, right, or days that I've used it. So again, no hassle with IT. It's everything is ready to go. We don't have to deal with IT. You just work with the platform directly. Other big piece that kind of new ways of doing things, right? Is just it's you don't really have to have the all this, most advanced hardware. You can work with whatever you have, because this hardware you can pick and select based on the software needs that you have. Obviously, these days as engineers, geologists, we work with a pretty demanding software, right? So 3D graphics and computational capabilities. So you can pick whatever hardware you want that feeds that need, right? All the way to actually the clusters ability, right? So everything is pretty easy and straightforward to order. So you don't have to maintain and upgrade every time you need to use a bit more advanced software for that. And again, as cloud, we're we will kind of moving these days. It's becomes pretty the safest and most secure way to work with the data and so forth. So, and a couple of things that we mentioned: the cost, the flexibility, ease of use. And when you think about this, how volatile the environment is still, right, these days for the companies to work with, for the consultants and so forth. So those kind of tools allow kind of to navigate through this volatility, right? So when we can bring there's the software and hardware as you need, and even sometimes get some extra help, extra hands, from the folks, and hire those folks on the kind of those temporary basis. We recently start pushing all this concept when you have people that you can hire, on pretty much, for the specific projects. You can get your software pretty much, either if you already have license, you're just a bit short on some of those license for the specific software, or you're just missing some tools for the software that you don't have. Again, you can easily add it to your existing softwares, right? Or bring those new software and try it and use it on as per need basis. So we kind of expanding this lately, the workspaces concept, and to this pretty much virtual office, right? So it's not only software, it's data as well. It's data in the cloud, exchange data capabilities between your local computers, your remote machines, your cloud storages. So you're pretty much going to have everything in one place through that workspaces, through that virtual office, when you can access it remotely from any place, any device. And you have that flexibility on managing things, getting things, use things when you actually need it, without the need to invest, obviously time and mainly money in this kind of long-term commitments, right, on software, hardware sides. So we are startup companies. We probably really just less than a couple of years in the business, especially on the workspaces side. And the good things, it's the folks that starting working with us, it seems like they stick with us, right? Even as we dealt with all this pandemic things in last year, it was folks, you don't have to sign contracts, so you don't have to cancel those contracts, terminate contracts. You have the working, the remote station that assigned to you, and as long as you're using it, you'll be charged. As long as you're not using, you'll not be charged. You can come back to this in a year, right, and start working without need to reinitiate those contracts and so forth. So it's pretty flexible and ultimately cost-efficient way of working. It's really just a couple of things that I have, a couple of slides that I have. I'll be happy to address some questions. But again, it's a technology in this case. It's not only, it's a lot of things about data analytics, right? But there are other things how we can do business more efficiently, and it's about the people and the tools that we're using, right? So happy to address some questions. Really, I know there's a few slides here, and roughly just going through the things we do here in Petrocubic.
Well, that's great. Thank you. I have some questions, but I want to see the chat. So Don Remmer says, oops, what happened here? Being an old Luddite, I know there are always IT issues. Everything is always secure until it's not. All this remote access is going to give my IT folks a heart attack. Give me some assurance here.
it's and it's a great question, right? And it's there's a lot of those questions we get all the time. We offer that business, but you'll be surprised that we're getting less of those questions from IT folks, right? And still getting some questions from others as well. But reality is that companies go into the cloud, as we speak, and a lot of them are already in the cloud, right? So a cloud becomes more secure, more safer space than keeping that data on some isolated, servers, right? That company may have one or two, not to say really the cost of supporting that. So, without going into technical details, but there are different ways to protect your data, protect your access. And the only thing I can tell is that we didn't have in those few years of experience, we didn't have any single issues, right, with the security, at least concern at that level. So there's more and more assurance, right, and less of that concerns about remote access, remote work, and the cloud in general, right? So
that's excellent. Okay, so Patrick King says, and by the way, Patrick is the chair of the AAPG Technical Interest Group Deep Learning. So anyway, he's highly interested in all these things. Anyway, I understand we can democratize, oh, I can't speak tonight, democratize software at incremental costs hourly that drive down the cost of EMP software. Is that correct?
Sorry, just making sure I'm understanding the question. So yes, I guess that's the whole benefit. So with the technology that we have these days, right, the access to this to that rental capabilities, and that for someone like consultants or even smaller companies, the ability to only pay for that software for only a few hours that they use, it's really just the way to actually survive, right? Especially for we're talking about really some expensive software that we have. So we definitely see a huge demand for this, and as we work with the vendors, it's not really just the rate that you need to pay. Basically, it's the flexibility of the model. Says more you use that software, less you pay, right? But at least you have this opportunity and ability to get the software on an hourly basis. And obviously, we're using a lot of existing technology, just combining some proprietary technology to combine it all, so we can read that usage, right? We can bill those companies, but it's really seamless and easy to use for the end users.
So one final question. That's great. Is there a possibility for a trial for the Petrocubic workspace?
Absolutely. We always provide trials for both, vendors when they want to test the software, and the users, right, when they want to use it. So just if you don't mind, just drop me a note, or you can go to the website info@petrocubic.com, send us a question, some information. We'll get it going.
Great. Well, if you don't mind sharing your email in the chat, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So before we go to our new technology showcase, Sunil Garg, I just want to just kind of share with you a few things that have been weighing on my mind in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I think that they are kind of filled with promise, but challenges for all of us. So when we think about how the demand for energy is going up, and the oil and gas price of oil is like 70 today, we're seeing that as the world kind of comes out of the pandemic, the demand for energy is going up, but our supply in reality is going down, and the supply that we privilege is more expensive. So what are the implications? I mean, the implications are not only supply chain issues and things like that, but kind of a permanently higher cost of energy, which means a lot of inflationary pressures. So when we think about that, because energy is going to be so expensive and permanently so, and that they're going to be everybody clamoring for energy, from multiple sources, that means that anybody who can do things with energy to save money, to find it more effectively, to integrate, there's going to be a huge demand for you, and it will be a privileged and coveted position. I mean, and skill set. So I'm just interested in sort of everyone's thoughts, and it's kind of ties in with what Sunil is going to be talking about, which is kind of this bigger picture. And I just wanted to kind of leave you with some of those thoughts and questions, and then invite you to email me or contact me with the types of like equipment for living that you need to be able to take advantage of that. What kind of skills, what kind of software, what kinds of ways of working can make you that valuable, always in demand asset to be an energy optimizer. Anyway, so Sunil, I'd like to invite you to share the platform and talk about smart operations.
Thank you, Susan. So hope everybody can hear me okay. So good evening, guys. I know it's getting late, so I will go straight to the topic. What I plan to present today is a little bit about our smart well operations powered by AI. And this is part of our larger DataVedik smart well optimization platform, which is focused on optimizing well construction operations. So hopefully, let's see if I can share my screen here. Yep, you should all be able to see my screen. Appearing okay? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Yep, so I would start by, with a quick introduction to just a first part of this, because we have limited time today. So I'm going to go over one workflow, which is around drilling, monitoring, and optimizations with an AI engine running behind the scenes, kind of, you can say, crunching the data, predicting different types of alerts, and then giving notifications, let's say, not only to the backend system, but also to the user. If a user is watching the system, you don't have to sit in front of the screen, in fact, to use the platform. So it keeps on continuously running behind the scenes. So what you're seeing is kind of, let's say if you were really sitting in front of the system as a drilling engineer or as a geologist watching the screen, watching the drilling operations. So I start by, maybe looking at a little bit first on, quick overview of what is happening, let's say, in my operations. So kind of giving you a quick idea of, what is happening at each rig. And you can put both the historical data as well as the real-time operations on there. So there's no limit to, how many operations you can put there. You can put as many as you want. So think of this as your, entry point to the system. So once you have entered the system, you can also dive deeper. Let's say, you are looking at each one of the wells. You are seeing what's going on with each well, which one is historical, which one is live. And then you decide to dive deeper. Okay, so let's say if I try to dive deeper into this one, right? So I took the second well, and it goes into what I call as a kind of overall well overview of that well. And what you are seeing is, the time depth chart here, just giving you a quick idea of what is going on. Also, you can see some color coding, which is basically being generated by a rig state engine running behind the scenes and kind of telling you, what is happening at every moment, basically, as the sensors data is streaming in. Let me go back to this one to go show you the big picture. And on the side of this, right? So this is typically the data coming from the EDRs or the sensor. And this side, what you are seeing is a combination of the data from the sensors and the daily operations reports. Essentially, it is telling you for each whole section, what is my performance versus the plant, as well as, if there is any NPT that I see in each one of the sections. So those are color coded there, of course, from the shallower to the deeper. You can also kind of break that down further. So you can see, the same section sizes are appearing here. I can dive deeper into that. Let's say if I said, I want to dive deeper into 12 1/4 inch section, I can look at, whatever the different operations that were going on. and also, completely dive deeper into each one of the rig states as well. I can also see, what's the distribution of the time going on. Yep. Once I do that, kind of looking at the overall well and kind of getting an idea of, where my well stands at this point of time. Is it running ahead? Is it running behind? What kind of NPT is happening? All of that. I can also make some notes. If I observe something unusual, I can just quickly, make a comment there. So that those comments are shared with all the users who can access this well in the system. So that way, the comments are always there. They become a part of the history of the operations of the well as well. Right? If you want to go further deeper dive into this system, what you can do is, you can look at, let's say, if I wanted to deeper dive into one of these sections, rather than looking at the overall well, I can quickly go there. And this one basically gives you an idea of not only the overall well, but any particular section you want to deep dive into. Right? So you can filter it down, let's say, to one of the sections. And what you're seeing here on the left-hand side, you're seeing the bit depth. And also you see some of those bands that are going across. Those are the ones which are indicating where the NPTs are happening. Those NPTs are also highlighted here for each one of the granular activities that is going on in the well in different sections. Okay? And also you can further deeper dive into that. Right? So you can see now there's a lot more granularity than what you saw at the well overview level. So you can kind of get a better idea of what is going on, not only in the section that is being drilled, but also any one of the sections that has already been drilled before. Yep. So that's kind of, looking at just at the overall picture. If you want to dig further, right, which is, let's say I want to, dig further into the sensors data, right? What is happening in real time, kind of, I'm in this case, receiving the data every second. You can do that too, right? So that is where the BHA operations screen comes in. And this is also where typically the alerts are raised. So if the AI system running behind the scenes sees something unusual, and there are quite a few of those running behind the scenes to say, what's going on, it will basically alert you. As an example, let's say, it detects that the drilling performance has gone down and maybe the bit has worn off. It will give you an advance notice in terms of, that it may be time to change the bit, or will give you basically an idea of the amount of time that, in which you should change the bit to get back to your optimal drilling performance. So that's one kind of alert that it gives out. You can also see that it is telling you, overall, till now, whatever operation has happened, how much time has got spent in each one of the rig states. So that is also kind of, if you see a lot of time getting spent outside your drilling rig state, that means, that's a kind of warning that your operation is not running at an optimal level. Okay. If you wanted to dig down further deeper into the connections, you can do that as well. So let's say, if I want to look at the tripping connections, I can do that. I can quickly look at every one of the tripping connections. I can also filter it down to a particular section again, just to see, what's going on with that section. And I can further go down deeper, right? I can go down deeper into any one of the operations. Let's say I went down to a casing operation and said, okay, give me, the tripping connections for the casing operation. You can also, of course, any one of the screens, if you want to further dig deeper, you can zoom in. You can also see, compared to, let's say, some benchmark time that has been collected and set for these connections, whether I'm doing better than those benchmarks or I'm doing worse than those benchmarks. So that's available, you can dig into as much granularity as you want. Similar kind of thing is available for your drilling connections as well, right? So in the drilling connections, same thing, except for now, you are seeing your weight to weight time, bottom to slip, slip to bottom, all of those times. And you can basically zoom down further into that. Again, you can look into a particular section. You can also drill down into a particular shift just to see, that in a particular shift, if I'm less efficient compared to, let's say, the other shift, right? That means one crew is doing better than the other. So you can do all of those kind of things, also compare those with the benchmarks. And the last part of this is essentially looking at, if I have the streaming data coming in, kind of looking at both the data as well as my daily operations report. So the sensor data as well as my daily operations reports overlaid, so that at any time, if I'm in the morning meeting, let's say, right, and I want to view the previous day, what happened and what was reported in the daily operations reports. This is like a combined view, you can say. The comments from the daily operations reports are showing up there against, what was happening in the streaming data or what you were seeing in the streaming data. So you can kind of, look at that as well. Again, another screen where if there are if there is anything unusual detected by the system, right, it will basically register an alert here. It will also generate a report out. So kind of, you can say AI running behind the scenes. What you see is essentially, what a typical user sees, right? And it's continuously kind of, you can say, optimizing the system. So I will stop there. Any questions? I will be happy to take.
Great. So what are some of the challenges that you're seeing?
So I would say, some of the challenges that we see is operation after operation. Sometimes you see similar kind of NPTs happening, okay, but with no clear visibility, let's say, right? In the absence of something like this, right, there is no clear visibility on why that is happening, even though, and, the inability to, let's say, prevent some of those. Also, one of the other things, which is, something that probably I will show sometime next, whenever we get an opportunity, is there used to be always a focus on how do I optimize, let's say, a drilling operation. Okay, how do I minimize the time spent in the drilling operation? Here, the focus is slightly different. Okay, it's not optimizing and saving time or saving costs on the drilling operation, but how to build that well for a longer term, you can say, optimized operation. So that's the next part that, being worked on. And I didn't have time today basically to bring the entire thing, but that's basically, anytime when I get an opportunity to show it next, that's where I will focus on and kind of show you that, because that is very critically important, basically. You can get some savings, let's say $1 million saving, $2 million savings in the drilling operation, but over the life history of the well, if the well is constructed poorly, you may end up losing, a lot more money than that. So that's kind of the focus of this system, is essentially looking at, the longer term optimization of the operations.
That's interesting. So this really essentially helps people make real-time decisions. And I would think that the biggest thing it might do is like help avoid catastrophes.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Susan? I missed the last part of it.
One of the things that it might do is help people have real-time interactions, and so they can do interventions in a timely way and avoid catastrophes.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I saw there's a question in the chat about, comparing connection speed to lost time injuries, which is kind of related. So again, right, as I said in my last comment, the goal of the system is to not achieve the fastest drilling operation, right? The goal of the system is to achieve an optimal drilling operation, along with that longer term goal of achieving the best performing well during its life history. Okay? At the same time, when I speak about optimization, right, safety is one big factor that it is taking into consideration. So not only, let's say, human safety, in addition to that, also, we don't want to drill the well recklessly and try to speed it up and having the equipment breaking down, because that can cost you a lot of money also straight away, right? So those goals are essentially set as the optimization goals behind the scenes in the AI running behind it.
That's great.
Let me see if they're okay. Yeah, I think those were the 2 comments on there.
Well, that's wonderful. So I'm really interested in some of the other perspectives too about the big picture. I think Francisco Aragonese mentioned something in the chat about inflation. Well, he said talking about hedge against inflation, but also kind of testing out, and there are other really interesting comments. Christopher Platt has had some interesting comments. And so I'd just like to invite people to open up their mics, turn on their camera, and comment and chat a bit. And John Thurmond is circling back. Any thoughts after seeing all these presentations?
I think it's we're really seeing a time of rapid change, a lot of new ways of working, a lot of different ways of seeing data, working with data, gathering data, and it's a really important topic, and I really urge everybody to pay attention to this whole world, because things are really evolving really quickly, and these days it's really keep up or get left behind.
Mm-hmm. Michael Campbell's in the audience, and he's been doing a lot of things with EMD, and has a lot of experience. Have you seen, what are some of the things that you're seeing? You're on mute. You're muted, Michael.
Okay, sorry. In addition, I agree with John, first of all, absolutely. But I was thinking down already. So the point is, things are changing so fast, it just makes my head swim. We monitor all the literature in energy, mostly related to the various alternative energies and natural gas and what have you, and the energy picture in general. And things are changing so quickly that groups form and then they dissolve. Anti-groups form and then they dissolve. Technology is working in between the two for communications, and I don't know where it's going to end. But the only reason I'm present in this particular webinar, although it's mostly oil and gas oriented, I have always stayed in touch with oil and gas because of the change that the oil and gas industry leads, and it always has led in most of geology, led the development of tools, of approaches for mapping, sampling, etc. So I think what you're doing, Susan, is right at the leading edge of what's going on, and yet it probably, let's say, frightens a lot of people. How am I going to stay relevant? How am I going to make money for my family and that sort of thing? But all I can say is, if it's anything like in the past, that you've got to just keep trying and stay up with the best technology as you can, and keep responding. Otherwise, you will be left behind. So philosophically, that's about all I guess comes to mind.
Well, thank you. And I'm thinking of what TGS has done. Like, okay, so it's pretty interesting to have those Pathfinder studies, to have into using data, also understanding of subsurface, understanding of modeling, and then just to say, okay, where's the value proposition here? And let's find pathways to the value proposition. So if we just break it down in our own minds to say, what is the value proposition in any kind of energy that we are near? What part can we contribute? Any thoughts about that?
I'm gonna venture here. So it's all about taking the risk to professionally sometimes. I'm going to talk from my point of view. I was for 25 years R&D, death imaging, publications, and at top of my game in a certain area of death imaging in geophysics. And at a certain point decided, okay, I need to change this. Things are changing. I cannot be I'm very comfortable here, but things can change one day too. And this field is getting a little bit too mature. So let's start looking at different things. So you need to be able to do that kind of adjustment and get out of your comfort zone sometimes. And that happened to individuals and happened to companies too. So that's something that as an organization, I'm very fortunate to be in an organization that is flexible enough to make that kind of decision. And as you said, TES has been looking at different other sources of revenue, not because they want to have a greenwash, it's just because there are other growing markets, and we still feel like there is a lot of opportunities in data for the oil and gas industry, but there are opportunities for other energy forms too.
Well, exactly. And again, thinking about anything that's expensive and needed is going to really be willing to invest to find more of it and to reduce the cost of having it, and also to predict what will happen in terms of behaviors, who has what, et cetera. So, I mean, there's room in this for all kinds of skills. The key seems to be integrative. So Jonathan G had a question in the chat. He said, have SPE and APG merged? Well, they were never really apart. No, I'm kidding. We were always one. Everything was unity. No, the thing is, no, but the announcement has been made that there will be an exploration. And I noticed that Denise Stone is on the call. Would you like to speak to that? Or is she gone now? She may have already left. She was here earlier. She's our treasurer for AAPG. But basically, the commitment has been made for AAPG leadership to examine the possibilities of their executive committees. And then there are a number of steps to go through. But it's an interesting concept, and I'm excited about it because I think it really opens a lot of doors. So anyway, any other questions or insights? So I have a question for the audience. So if you are from outside the US, please put something in the chat box. So I noticed that Lindsay Ross, would you like to speak for a moment? Because Lindsay's been doing a lot of interesting things with EMD, and from his perspective, see if he's still here. People are starting to, we have like 1 minute left, so people are starting to trickle out. Well, Lindsay is from Australia, and he's been leading the fray with critical minerals and encouraging people to diversify in that way with battery technology. And Denise is still here, but I don't think she probably was choosing not to participate, or maybe didn't hear me. Anyway, well, really appreciate that, everybody who participated, and just want to take a moment to thank everyone for speaking. And John, I'd just like to give you the last few words.
Sure. No, I mean, just to really reiterate, really appreciated seeing the different perspectives today and hearing the conversation of what people think will be the new ways of working. Things will keep changing, and we need to keep paying attention. So thanks, Susan, for organizing as always, and appreciate the invitation.
Well, thank you. And Rick Fritz wanted to tell me that he had to step away for a kind of personal issue, but he wanted to thank everyone for attending. And also just to stay tuned. Exciting things will be coming along, and we'll be continuing to have these workshops.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thanks for the invitation. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a great session again.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the invitation as well.
Quite
Thank
well.
you.